Welcome into Overtime, presented by McDonald's. Dewey, Dailey, along with John Bruce for today's show, episode 28 of the show. John, we're inching closer to the 1/3-ish mark of 100. I'm not sure we'll get there by the end of the spring season, but hopefully we can at least get to 50.
I don't want us to get to 100.
Yeah, that'd be kind of wild. But today, same as always, going to talk some individual performances, some team updates, and some game previews coming up this week that maybe we'll be at. Maybe we think you should get out and see them, but we're interested in the matchups for both boys and girls.
Yeah, it should be a fun week. You know, it's sometimes some of the teams are starting Christmas break a little early. Some are, playing a full schedule for the week. So, we'll go in depth on some of the standouts from last week and kind of overall in the season as well. As we're trying to highlight as many teams and players as possible. And, some of these teams are, having a longer perfect start to their, and if we haven't highlighted your team in our standout spot, it's probably because we're going to talk about them throughout otherwise. So.
Right. Yeah. So we'll talk some standout performances, both boys and girls. We'll start with the boys as always. And if you want to look in the comments down below, we'll have timestamps. So if you see something you like that we're going to talk about, you can jump right to it. Makes it a lot easier to see what you want to see instead of having to sit through the whole episode and just kind of skim through until you hopefully find what you're looking for. But,
if you don't want to look at the elf or this giant swoosh the whole time.
We did get a nuggie.
Oh yeah, we did get one. The Kerwin Frost box. It's like Don Bernice. Is one of the nice.
I can't believe you can take them out and just take everything off. Yeah.
God. He no longer has the afro. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So we got the Don Bernice of the Kerwin Frost. Maybe trying to get Kerwin Frost too because he's really,
that's the main one.
Yeah, he's fun.
I think I saw there's a gold one that's not on the box. But
Ooh.
It's if you get lucky, you can get it.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of sweet.
Yeah.
But, all right, so we'll jump right into the standout performances for the boys, a player that I think we talked about in the previews, but I don't think we have since. And really, it's DeAndre Berry for Portsmouth. They've had a great start to the season so far in an OVC league that, with Fairland and South Point, maybe Portsmouth gets overlooked a little bit, but they've looked really strong so far.
Yeah, Portsmouth didn't have the Portsmouth-type season that, people that are familiar with the area, are used to. They haven't been playing as well the last few years, but it hasn't been because of DeAndre Berry. Then, they make the coaching change this year. Coach Lintz comes back from Dayton Northridge, which is where he was the last few years, and to his alma mater, and they're off to a 4-0 start for the first time since 2015. So it's obviously a really good start for them, but a lot of it's because of DeAndre Berry. Last week he had 30 points in a win over Rock Hill on Tuesday, and then he said, you know what, I'll do one better, as he had 31 against Gaia Academy on Friday. He's averaging over 25 points a game so far this year. He's going to be closing in on 1,000 career points. I think that'll probably come in January. But yeah, just he's been outstanding for them. The combination of him, Malachi Loper, who came from Portsmouth Clay, who I don't know if he'll get to 1,000 this year, but he's going to be close as a junior. If anytime you can add a player that averaged 17 points a game, it doesn't matter how many wins the team came from, because somebody's got to score, and he was by far the top of that. Scouting report Loper was, and so he's been a really big help for them so far. And then also Donovan Breach is also averaging, I believe, around 14 points a game for them. The win on Friday over Gaia Academy was also the 1,500th win in Portsmouth history. It's going back, I believe, over 100 years, and they've won several state championships, been to the Final Four a ton of times, and it's just an outstanding overall program, and it looks like Coach Lysett got them going on the right direction. I also saw something where their JV team won one game last year, and they've already doubled that this year.
What?
So so I don't know if they're getting more players out that maybe weren't the last couple of years, because sometimes it just takes a little fresh, just a little change of pace. It's a as we said, it's a very proud program. They host Colgrove on Tuesday, so tonight, and then also Dayton Stivers. Hold on. The Dayton Stivers Center for the Arts on Friday.
Is that really what the school is called? That's crazy.
It is it's a really cool looking school. Like I haven't been in it, but I lived by it when I went to Wright State and driving by, and it's how we were talking to Kenneth about what Washington Courthouse School looks like. It's similar to that, except for it's much older.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Dayton Stivers is a good quality program as well. So that should be an excellent chance for them to go to 6-0 this week.
I will say, like, the one unfortunate thing about the OVC is, like, currently all the really good teams are so far away. So, like, Fairland, Ironton. I think Ironton's actually the closest out of, like, Fairland, Ironton, and South Point. But, like, South Point is over 2 hours away. I think Fairland is as well. So, really...
Well, then Chesapeake's right over there, too.
Right, and... I think for our purposes, when it comes to like streaming, we may have to do Fairland at Portsmouth for both boys and girls, because I think both of those matchups will be interesting to watch. We caught that game last year. I believe Fairland walked away with that one, and they brought a lot of their guys back. Obviously, with Portsmouth, they lost Lattimore, but I mean, you bring in Loper to sort of fill that shoe, and then. You have Donovan Breach as well, and I mean the year DeAndre Berry has been having is insane. So anytime you can get a guy averaging 25 over their first four, I mean, do you know off the top of your head when they play Fairland or when they play Portsmouth for the first time is?
I do not, but I believe it is after Christmas.
Okay, so we have a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks until. At the minimum, until we were going to get that match.
Yeah, because for the most part, like we kind of mentioned it in the start, like league play after Friday is off until after the start of January.
Like holiday classics, and I think that's why you have Portsmouth hosting Dayton Stivers. I'm assuming,
on a Friday,
right? Now, I don't know if that's a classic, but it's still sort of an out of market.
Yeah,
a team that you're not going to play very. I'm sure they've probably played Dayton Stivers. Not very much over the course of their
Now I do
team.
think them. You're probably gonna laugh at the third team I say them. So Portsmouth, I think Ironton and Wellston probably have the widest variety of teams played in our area, because Wellston hosted a holiday classic for a long time. And at one point might have lost by 100 to LeBron, but
really,
they played them. They got LeBron to play down at Wellston. I think it was sophomore year, maybe.
That was that he lost their junior year.
Yeah, it was the junior year, but yeah, it was a. Those are teams that because of either being independent or just being historic schools, they've played a wide variety of teams from outside the area as well. So it is interesting anytime a team like from our area is able to play a team from outside of our area. So like it's in the southeast, but Marietta played like Massillon Perry the other day. I'm like, that's who knows? Like it was a game they were down like 15 at the half, they ended up winning. So like, yeah, that's a good win, and especially playing a team from outside the area, because they probably play a different style of basketball. For like if we talk about the OVC plays a different style of basketball than like the SVC does. I would think the OVC and the Shack play a similar style because they like to get up and down and
a lot quicker.
Yeah, so it's different areas have different styles. So.
Right. All right, so we'll head north a little bit. We'll keep it in. Well, I say keep it. We'll move to the SVC. Garrett Legg recording the 7th triple-double in Piketon history. I think when we were waiting outside, because we did the girls' game with Adena and Piketon the other day, we were sort of looking up at their kind of like Wall of Fame guys.
Yeah.
I think we saw maybe a guy that had a triple-double, or maybe you were mentioning something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know we were sort of looking around some of those older guys. But Garrett Legg adds his name into Red Streak history.
If you can put your name in the annals of Piketon Red Streak basketball history, it's pretty good now, because it could be like a Doug Williams who's coaching at Western now that went and played Division I. Eric Cottle came in as a senior, and he took a a pretty good Piketon team to the complete next level and took them into the regionals. They had, they've had a variety of really good players. I mean, heck, their coach right now, Kyle Miller, was an unbelievable player. Like, he went and played professionally in Australia. So it's very impressive to be able to do that, the triple double, and also it was a 63-51 win over Valley.
Right.
So it wasn't a garbage time triple
Right,
double.
right.
This was a like legitimate, 12 points, 11 rebounds, 11 assists. Like that's pretty
Stat
impressive.
sheet stuffer.
Yeah,
Just got over the edge in every one.
Yeah, and by all accounts, needed that because that's just you take his 12 points away, there's 51.
I was going to say, I mean, if you
at
put
least 22 points.
I was
in
going
the
to say,
assists.
accounted for sort of half of their points in the game. And, I mean, who knows what, I mean, I'm sure he had a couple steals or, whatever else. But, yeah, great performance for Legg. They pick up a win over a good Valley team. I think we heard that Copley didn't play that game, but still, I mean, that's a big win over an SOC3 team.
Valley, like I'm sure Copley did play against Western, but man, they put it on Western this weekend. So it's even without Copley, they're capable. They would be a little off scoring wise at least to start, but then they can figure it out because they got some good young talent. But for Piketon's first win of the season, that was a really big performance from Legg. As we mentioned in the preseason, it seems like he's healthy now, and that's going to really help him take his game to the next level.
I will say that Valley win over Western, especially to like the magnitude it was, that sort of surprised me a little bit because we had seen Western in person, and I mean we'd seen their box scores because we prepped for that game we did.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess on paper, if before the game, if you asked me who was going to win, I wouldn't even have thought about it. I would have picked Western, but I mean.
Yeah, and
Valley gets it done, and I think, was that at Western or was it at Valley?
I don't remember.
I know. I mean, obviously it's non-league, so they're only going to play once.
Yeah, I do like how the SOC's done it this year. With, I don't love the fact they're not playing their league games until January, but they're playing other people in their league before. So you're playing people from the different areas of the league. Like we'll talk about South Webster a little bit later, and like they're playing South Gaia this week.
It's at Western.
That's a really good win. Yeah. So, and for Piketon, just going back to Piketon, they play at Paint Valley on Tuesday. An excellent chance for them to, get themselves on the right side of things. And then I think that's their last game until after Christmas. So,
well, like we said, some teams take a longer break. Some teams just sort of take a 2 or 3 day break and then pick. I know there were some teams that play on the 23rd and then play on the 27th, so they just take a little 3 day break. All right, so we'll head to Northwest now. Connor Lintz, a guy we talked about a ton during the football season, has now reached 1,000 career points at Northwest, 78-41 over Glenwood. They're off to a 5-1 start, John. And I know in the previews, Northwest was a team that we felt was, and I know South Webster sort of, I think that was a 12-point game.
Yeah.
But obviously that's non-league. But so I still think within the SOC 2, Northwest is maybe the favorite right now, with Western and Eastern probably up there as well.
yeah, I feel like they're probably safe to say that they're the favorite, but it seems like they're still not very healthy. But I mean, when you have Connor Lentz along with Tanner Bolin had 26 points and 15 rebounds in that win over Glenwood. But here's my question for you. Did you see the graphic we put out for Connor Lentz?
The 1,000-point graphic, yeah.
How about that mustache?
Yeah,
that
I
is.
figured you're going to say something.
Yeah,
about
that is a outstanding mustache. But yeah, for Lentz, he's averaging over 20 points a game. In their loss against South Webster, he had over 20. So I mean, he's been a big part of everything they've done over the last 4 years, or 3 years, and will continue to this year as well. I'm excited to get down and watch them against Eastern Western, those games. But yeah, so they're off to a 5-1 start. They lost to South Webster, who's outstanding. So not a bad loss at all. But I think once they get fully healthy, they're going to be a really a tough matchup, especially in that SOC 2. And I think they can stack up some wins and get themselves a favorable, favorable seed for the tournament. Now,
So another one of those D3s and
D3s.
boys is something else right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, like Friday night, South Point went like only beat Chesapeake by a point. Like we talked about Portsmouth already. Ironton, North Adams, who we covered last week. Minford,
Zane Trace, all
yeah,
these
Zane
teams.
Trace, and it's I'm sure we even for Wheelersburg, like
Yeah,
forgetting
always a
some
sneaky team.
yeah.
And when they get counted out, it's like you can just never. I mean, they may not be. I think maybe they went like 12-12 last year, but I'm sure they still had some big wins over some guys that you maybe didn't expect from some of the losses they had. So.
Yeah, so I know Miles Montgomery had to hit a 3 to beat them down at Minford too. So they're a team that you just never know. I mean, West beat Jackson.
Yeah.
Like it's just like you don't know. Not even mentioning Westfall, who we're going to talk about here in a minute. It's just
The
D3
is
got
going to be wild.
Yeah.
That's going to be a hard. Like if we were to fill out sort of a March Madness bracket just for D3, that would be tough to fill out.
We might have to do it.
But it also that would be sort of a cool segment to have,
Yeah.
like just have an episode, because obviously girls starts usually a week or week or two before, so we could do an episode where like obviously it would be girls first, where we go through each bracket and sort of fill out our own bracket and that kind of stuff. Obviously, it all depends on the matchups, but like with all those teams we just mentioned, like obviously we saw Minford and Northwest last Tuesday, but like some of these D3 teams that aren't going to play in the regular season, like you would love to see Minford and Portsmouth. I know they played last year. I don't think that game finished, but
It did not.
I don't know if Minford plays Fairland in the regular season, but if they do, that would be a matchup
Right.
to watch as well. So D3 is going to be really
Yeah,
interesting.
did we even mention Fairland?
I don't know. I mean, we did when we were talking about Portsmouth, but and luckily for us, oh man, I'm still stuck in like the COVID year where some of the games were at Waverly. So I was going to say these games are going to be at Waverly, but they'll be at the Convo, which I mean that's. For our purposes, that's probably the best setup we could have.
Yeah.
'Cause the one time we went there, it was really great. So
Yeah, the big thing for me when it comes to Division 3 is going to be is it going to be that the max preps like seedings, because really in a year like this where there's so many good teams and they come from a variety of different areas. So you didn't even mention Eastern Brown too. So a variety of areas of where these schools are coming from. That's where like that bipartisan like thing that doesn't care can seed the teams, and that's where like strength of schedule could really come in.
Right.
So I'm interested to see how that whole thing goes.
if is McDermott or Latham closer, or West Latham, whatever it's called. Are they about the same?
Yes,
I know. Like is it Latham or West Latham?
Latham.
Like I've driven past that school a couple of times, and it just like comes out of nowhere. Like it's just a bunch of trees, and then it's just a big school. I feel like with Northwest, it's a little. It's sort of like that too, but I've never been to Western, so we might have to get over there for them in Northwest.
I'll tell you what. If we do, we gotta go early and go to the Amish store and get a pretzel sandwich.
Or I bet they have green licorice.
I bet they. Sure. Yeah, I
green
bet
licorice
they.
is so good.
I bet they have everything. I think they actually hilariously take cards now, which is
way.
the weirdest thing for an Amish place. Because I remember going there with Coach
Definitely
Hoops.
don't take Apple Pay.
Yeah, and he's like, "Man, you gotta try this place." He said, "Do you have any cash?" I said, "No, I only got my card." He goes, "I got you." I was like, "Why can't I just pay with card?" He goes, "Oh no, it's an Amish place." So, and they actually have a sign that's like, the closest ATM is in Bainbridge. It's just like, but yeah, it's
If you don't have cash, you're in trouble.
yeah, high quality food.
All right,
But
so go ahead.
I was gonna try to cycle back to Connor Lintz is really good.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see them in Eastern, them in Western, and just any combination of a matchup between those three teams. I'm interested to see, and I mean, who knows? Maybe Sims Valley or
Right.
South Gallia. Who am I leaving out?
Oak Hill.
Oak Hill's in the 2. I thought
Yeah.
they were in the 3. Okay.
They're the two. No, that league is loaded because I mean Oak Hill's off to I think either 3-2 or 4-2 start. South Gallia is off to a 5-1 start, and
We've
barely
talked a little
mentioned them.
South Gallia
Yeah.
for girls,
Yeah.
but not so much boys.
And then Sims Valley has a couple really good players. So I mean, it's a league that I think you better bring it every night because it's going to be really good.
All right, so we'll wrap up the individual performances with one we saw in person. Bennett Kayser going crazy
Yes.
against North Adams. I guess now it would be last week. It was last Tuesday in Seaman. 15 points, 21 rebounds, a 53-35 win over the Green Devils, a big non-conference win. I will say for Minford, they did have a game on Saturday against Oak Hill that I haven't checked this morning, but when I checked last night, there was no score yet. I would assume Minford won. But I'm not totally sure because I couldn't find a score on Max Preps, or when I looked on Twitter, I couldn't find anything. But
I just saw it, 69-32.
69-32. So they're now, what are they now? 3-1.
3-1.
3-1. So coming up so 3-1 win over Oak Hill. So they go 2-0 last week over North Adams and at Oak Hill. So they go on the road twice and pick up two big non-league wins. And they'll continue the non-league this week. They'll host Eastern on Tuesday, who we saw Drew Tomlinson. I'm excited to see Drew Tomlinson versus Bennett Kayser.
Yeah.
It's sort of a big lanky kid against a big thicker kid.
Yeah.
I mean, they're sort of the same height, just built a little bit
Right.
differently. So that'll be an interesting matchup to watch in that game. Then they also play in the, I'm not sure if there's a name for it,
I
but
think it's just
sort
the
of like
Ironton Classic.
Ironton Holiday, some sort classic. It's a big classic on Thursday. We're still hoping to get down there. We're not totally sure it's Tuesday. We should probably know, but
Yeah.
we'll figure it out. But for Minford, they travel to Ironton to take on Afrocentric on Thursday. So, I mean, if you can pick up a win over Eastern and Afrocentric, I mean, a great chance to head into the holiday break 5-1.
Yeah, I really liked the makeup of their team. They're still, last year they played 6 guys. The other night at North Adams they played 6 guys. But
No, I thought they played more. Was Glockner the only one that came off the
Glockner
bench?
was the only one that came off the bench. Yeah.
I thought, Pika started.
Yeah, Pika started and
Rhodes started.
Rhodes he had
He
some
knocked
big
down
plays.
he had a couple blocks, knocked down a corner three. He
Yeah.
had a good game.
Yeah, it was just I like the way their team's set. And and that's with Jackson Shoemaker, obviously Miles Montgomery, but man, Bennett Kayser, he went literally above and beyond. He almost had our
Man,
our entire show would have been just that dunk if he would have been able to get
yeah,
it.
that was wild.
Hey,
I will say,
shout out Carson Osborne trying to go up with him on it. Like,
man, I don't know. He jumped from.
I think he was too
way
far
up.
out,
Yeah,
but
I don't even know if even if Osborne wasn't there, I'm not sure if he would have been able to finish that
Yeah.
because I swear he jumped from like 10 feet out. It was crazy, but I mean, he got it there. It was
Yeah.
close, but. Hopefully we can see Minford again because I think we had Hannah last year had the putback dunk. I mean, Kayser clearly capable of doing something similar to that. So
yeah, Kayser, 15 points, 21 rebounds in a game like that, and like we mentioned in the pregame, like they had a good size advantage, and man, they took advantage of it. And he's so long he's 6'6", and I feel like his wingspan's 7 foot because his arms are long, he's slender. And it's just like he can go up and over for offensive rebounds without fouling, and it's just it was really impressive for Kayser in that game. And obviously you had Miles Montgomery had a solid game, Shoemaker had a solid game also, and like you mentioned Rhodes made some big impact plays in that game as well. So really impressed with the Minford team.
they also have a game. I didn't see this when I was originally looking. They have a game against Sims Valley on Friday. So pretty busy week for the Fighting Falcons. But I'm not sure what Sims Valley is off to a 2-2 start. They're in the SOC 2. So we'll see. I mean, with all of the SOC teams, it's sort of interesting to see how they compare from 1, 2, and 3. So that'll be another interesting matchup, especially with we don't talk a whole lot about Sims because right now we're sort of just honed in on Northwest, Western, and Eastern.
Right.
But I mean, Sims Valley, South Gallia, Oak Hill, any of those teams could start to make names for themselves once we get into league play. All right, so we'll look at a couple standout performances for teams. So there's sort of team updates to teams that I said teams about 6 times right
That's
there.
all right.
But
I do the same.
Just a couple teams that have been off to really hot starts, and we're going to tell you why and if we think that can continue. And we'll start with an SVC team, Pickaway Hoops, Westfall, off to a 4-0 start. I think 2-0 in the SVC as well.
Yep, 2-0 in the SVC.
Best start since 2009.
Probably going to start 5-0 as they're at Huntington tonight on Monday. But
Better
best
hope
starts.
Manson doesn't start
Yeah,
just hounding them on the glass.
well, could happen. It's kind of an interesting matchup in that, but we'll see. I think their depth of guard play is going to help a lot there. But Mustangs off to their best start since 2009. The guard duo of Brody Clark and Joe Ray have been a huge part of that. Clark averaging 18.3 points a game, Ray averaging 15.5. One of the things I noticed when they played Amanda was Ray didn't look comfortable shooting. Last week he had a game with 3 threes and then another game with 5 threes. So I think he figured it out pretty quickly. He's done an outstanding job running their offense. And then Brody Clark is just an outstanding overall scorer, but just a great shooter. It was kind of weird because in those games, Clark made the exact same amount of threes. So, yeah, there's a game where they made 10 combined threes, and it's just like have fun guarding that. But it's not just those two. On defense, they have not given up 50 points to an opponent yet this year. Their high was 47 against Paint Valley in a game they won 77-47. So I think that one might have just been hey, we're just going to go play at this point. So the defense kind of gets relaxed a little bit once you start putting up that many points. But, they also, they've won by an average of 18.8 points a game. So their closest game was an 8-point game at Southeastern, which, it's at Southeastern, not an easy place to play. In Southeastern, we saw them against Waverly. They're a solid team.
Waverly, another team off to they're 4-2 now. So.
Yeah. And then, the combination, so you have Clark and Ray, and they're doing the majority of the scoring, but also defensively, Bryden Gall, Henry Barnes, Jeremiah Layton provide them a lot of length and depth of their front court, and they all can give them 5 to 8 points a game, and that's, huge. And I think we would have talked about it last year if we would have been on here, but like, Layton and Barnes shoot an extremely high and efficient percentage around the basket. And then they're getting solid contributions off the bench from Brendan Tuttle and especially Brian Craig. Craig, only a freshman, but man, he's going to be a star for them.
And really, I mean, you can look at a guy like Bryden Gall, Brian Craig, or Brendan Tuttle. Is Tuttle a guard? Or is
he's a guard.
So, I mean, you can look at those three guys and like, we've talked about how Ray only has the first half of the season, so one of those guys probably going to find a bigger role once we get into the second. I'm not sure where the cutoff is, but once that cutoff happens, somebody else is going to have to step up. So.
Yeah, so it's a so that part's kind of a dilemma for them because how outstanding Ray's been, but I do think that they are a team that with that depth and especially you have time to try to figure it out early. And it seems like they're doing a good job of that. They host Huntington on Tuesday. I actually said it was at Huntington, but it's actually at Westfall. And then I was actually wrong in the preseason. I was informed New Hope was down a little bit. They're 4-0. They're going to move to 5-0 tonight. So that could be on Thursday at the Dome. 5-0 versus 5-0. New Hope Christian against Westfall. So.
Well, I know we've sort of talked about it a little bit, but I wasn't sure who the Statesmen. So who do they play all year? Just
a variety.
Pickaway County schools. Or?
They'll play a lot of.
Fisher Catholic. That's in Portsmouth, isn't it?
The Lancaster.
Oh, Lancaster. So that's still sort of.
Yeah, the Bruce family dynasty moved there after Flagey closed.
Portsmouth West, Sauda Christian, Wellston, Newark Catholic, at Westfall, Adena, Vinton County, Green, Liberty Union. So they get around a little bit. Seems like they play a fair amount of SOC teams as well. They have Eastern and Notre Dame at Waverly. That could be an interesting matchup.
Yeah.
As well, especially if we think New Hope Christian is as good as they've been to start off in their first 4.
Yeah, New Hope's interesting because I remember when they first started, you just it was just like, oh, you're just playing this Christian school, and then like they've won a couple of the Christian state championships in their division that they play in, And
I was going to say, because they're not OHSA
no,
affiliated.
yeah, but so they're not OHSA affiliated, but they had an All Ohio player last year. So I don't fully understand that part of it,
Right.
but and it's a program that's been really good for the last 5 or 6 years. I know Vinton County played them a few years ago, and I think when Vinton County played them, I think was when I was like, why are they playing them? And then like the game was really close. I'm like, oh, that's why they're playing them, because this is it's a good program. And so just overall, that should be a good game on Thursday.
Last boys team we're going to talk about, the Jeeps down in South Webster, similar to Westfall. Off to a 4-0 start, 59-47 win over a pretty good Northwest team. I think it was at Northwest as well on Saturday. Eli Roberts, Tyler Summer have been big for the Jeeps so far, winning games by through their first 4, winning games by 24 points per game. So they're taking care of business so far.
Yeah, I got to see them in person down at Shawnee State when they played Belpre, and they were down.
The only area team, boys area team that won.
They were down 6 at the half, and then in about the first 4 minutes of the second half, they were up 20. Or not 20, but they were up like 12, and then they ended up winning that game by like 25. And it was just, it's very impressive to see what they can do, showing their depth of guards. And, obviously when you have like Eli Roberts and Tyler Summer both averaging over 20 points a game and 8 rebounds. They had the same amount of rebounds through the first, I believe it was 3 games were posted at that time, which Roberts had 29 and 10 in that game. Summer may have dropped under 20 a game with that, because I don't think he was over 20 in that win over Northwest. But they are, and then you have Jack Timothy coming off the bench he's 6'4" and averaging 11.3 off the bench. Like, oh, you think you get a break from Roberts and Summer? Nope, not at all. One thing for them, before I get into like more, it's just the 3-point shooting hasn't been great so far. So I think if there's one thing they can improve on, because they've been very impressive so far, would be about just that. But at the same time, if you're getting layups, then why do you need to make threes? Right. But they also have, Dylan Schubert averages 6 points, 3.7 steals a game starting for them. Owen Malt averages 8 points a game. Christian White averages 6 assists a game. I mean, that's, just throw that in there with your starters. And that's not even mentioning like Bernard Campbell, some of those other kids that have been really good for him so far. Hall of Fame and state championship winning coach Norm Pearson. Really exciting start for the Jeeps, and it's just I think they got an interesting week coming up this week as they finally get to play a home game. They had not played a home game. They play
like Miami Trace.
Yes, they host 5-1 South Gallia on Tuesday. Thursday they play Raceland, Kentucky, which is 4-3 over at Ironton. I believe that's the game before Minford plays.
That's the early game. Well, for us, it would be, if we were to get down there, that would probably be the first game between those two.
And then on Friday, they host Oak Hill. So, interesting week for them. At least they get to be home for a couple of them. So, it's a team that, if they can stay, focused and everyone locked in, they're a really scary team, especially in Division 4.
No, I mean, it is, right, especially in Division 4, where there aren't as many most of our area teams are D3, so like D4, like
it's a lot of the Hawking, TVC Hawking schools.
But for South Webster, I mean, in the SOC 3, probably them and Minford at the top. I mean, you can't really count out Wheelersburg. We haven't seen Waverly against a league opponent yet, so we'll sort of wait to see what they do. Who else is in there?
This West, who beat
Portsmouth
Jackson.
West, who beat Jackson, who's towards, I know they just lost to Miami Trace, so, but.
And then Valley with Copley.
Yeah, you just never know.
Yeah, well, and then, let's say where Copley sat that game. Maybe some kids got some extra confidence going off. And, when you win by 26 at Western, that's pretty good.
All right, so we'll jump into a few game previews coming up this week. We'll start with tonight. a couple of games coming up tonight. One that we're going to live stream in Frankfurt, but we'll save that one for a second. We'll start with some OVC action. Fairland and Ironton, two teams that are unbeaten in the OVC. We mentioned how these are probably two of the top three-ish teams. I mean, it's kind of hard to judge, like, Fairland, Portsmouth, South Point, Ironton. I feel like all those guys are sort of have a hand in who's going to win the league, and it wouldn't surprise me if just how many good teams are in that league if you have like a three-way tie or a two-way tie.
Well,
anyway,
that's not even mentioning Gaia.
Right.
Like, it's just, Gaia's had a lot of success over the last few years. They've gotten off to kind of a rocky start, but like that league is very, very good. Did you mention Rock Hill? Like, Rock Hill's solid. It's just, you've got a bunch of, talented teams that can really make some noise in there. And, these are two of them. I think this will give us a really good showing of where the Tigers are right now, because, they had that very easy win over Fairview, but then they go to overtime against a winless Colgrove. Now, winless Colgrove isn't the same as a winless Ripley. I was just trying to think of a school in our area that is winless, but they go, they had to come back from down 10 with a little over a minute left, down 9 in the last minute to force overtime, but then they go out and win. Ironton's got Sean Terry, Braden Schreck. Those two we've talked about, a lot, not just basketball, but football as well. Okay. And then Ashton Lane had a really big game for them in that win over Colgrove. So, they're going to need all three of those guys if they're going to try to slow down Chase Allen, Will Davis, Brody Buchanan. Just a really difficult matchup. Keegan Smith's been really good so far for Fairland so far, and Noah Markham's another one that's given really good minutes for them. I know he had a double-double in their win over North Adams. So I think this is going to be a really interesting game. I think being at Ironton is a slight advantage for Ironton. Now, one thing, Fairland is going right back to Ironton on Thursday to play the Lindley Academy.
A ton of good games in Ironton this week.
Yeah, so it's this is just an interesting matchup. I think it should be a fun game. I've heard a lot of good things about Ironton so far. I've seen Fairland in person, and those guards are just they're just a matchup nightmare. I mean, Chase Allen is not very big, but he plays bigger than he is. Brody Buchanan, if he was right-handed, would be very tough to guard, but then being left-handed, he's very quick off the dribble, can pull up, and then Will Davis gives them, he can go inside out. He had a couple moves in that Unionta game that were just unreal, and one he got called for a travel on that was definitely it wasn't. But yeah, they're a well-coached team, and I think this is a really good test for Ironton.
All right, then we'll move down to Zane Trace at Adena. This is also coming up tonight. We're going to be there and live stream that one. And really, both of these teams 2-2 and they've had the exact same league schedule so far. So there's a lot to compare between the two teams. For Zane Trace, they're 2-2, 2-0 in the SVC. So they're still winless outside of the league. They lost to Circleville and Vinton County, but you have a 3-point win against Unionta, and then I think it was a 14-point win over Piketon. Right, and Landon Gerald's been huge for Zane Trace so far. He's averaging 18 through their first 4. There have been a couple other guys that have been big for them as well. But, I mean, Zane Trace has looked really, really good so far, especially in league play. And then, for Adena, also 2-2, 1-1 in the SVC, 1-1 out of the league. They lose to Chesapeake. They lose to Unionta by 18. They do beat New Boston, and they do have a really close win against Piketon, 54-53. So, I mean, you look at these two teams. For Unionta, for Zane Trace, a 3-point win over Unionta. For Adena, I think it was an 18-point loss. And then even when you look to Piketon, it was a 14-point win for Zane Trace. And for Adena, it was a 1-point win. So, and it is in Frankfurt, which, similar to Fairland and Ironton, I think gives a slight edge to Adena. But, I mean, when you just look on paper and look at the common opponents, I feel like Zane Trace probably comes in as a favorite to win. But, I mean, Adena came into the season with a lot of hype. They got a lot of good guys. I mean, you have Jody Ader and Easton Hennis are both averaging over 10 points a game. You have Lucas King, who's at 15.5 through their first 4. He's also averaging a team-high 7.3 rebounds. Like I said, it's a team that, after the preview, had a ton of hype around them. They're thinking... Some people even thinking it's Junior and Adena out of the top. Now, Zane Trace has obviously stepped in, and as of now, I think you kind of have to have them as the favorite after a win over a team like Unioda, and especially if they're able to take down Adena here tonight. But I'm excited for this matchup, and hopefully, these are two teams that I think play faster, sort of play that OVC style that we were kind of playing, that Shaq style of offense. So, fast-paced game. I'm excited to get over to Frankfurt.
Yeah, it should be a good one for sure. And I think where Zane Trace, those first 2 games, they lose to Circleville, who's 4-2, lose to Vinton County, who's undefeated. Like, those games get you ready for a Unioda to where, you're down 9 in the fourth quarter and you don't worry. Right. Like, you just keep doing your thing, and that's how they end up coming back to win that. Then they go down to Piketon. Isn't an easy place to play and hold them to 33 points. So, as you mentioned, Landon Jarrell, he's been outstanding so far. He's a really hard matchup because he can get to the basket under control, but he also is an outstanding 3-point shooter. He distributes the ball really well. Ezra Rippeth is another kid in the backcourt with him that gives them the ability to be a hard driver, but he can shoot it a little bit also. Landon Robinson, just a really good, tough overall player. And then you got Carter Langley and Brock Gerald who bring you, senior leadership. And that's without mentioning, a Noah Houston off the bench who's a really good athlete, and Gunnar McCullough. So they've got
a lot, relatively deep.
Yeah. So they go 7 deep, but they're a team that, they've won at every level. So maybe they don't have the big size that some places have. So it's, some of these matchups are going to be tough for them, but they're winners.
They had a double gold ball last year.
Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah. So, like the kids that are coming up from the JV team, they won last year. The kids that are back from last year's gold ball winning team, they obviously won. So, I mean, they're used to winning. Now, for Adena, maybe they're not as used to winning. They went 7-16 a year ago.
At least this class. I think they were freshmen when the last time Adena won the league with like Sykes and Garrison and Bennett and all those guys.
Yeah, I mean, but man, they've got some good athletes, as you mentioned. Jody Ader, I think was, and I still wouldn't put him to the back burner for SEC Player of the Year, but he was one of the front runners coming into the season. So, I think he's going to be a tough matchup. I think more than likely it's going to be Robinson guarding him, but man, that should be a really good matchup.
Because you got to have somebody on Lucas King as well, and Easton Hennis as well. So.
Yeah, and so Hennis has made a bunch of shots this year. He shot the ball well for him. Lucas King shot the ball very well. I believe he was like 6 for 8 in a game from 3. They had a game where they were 13 of 18 from 3. And that was the new Boston game. So, like, even if those are open shots, like, you still gotta make them. And
like Curry, what was it the other night? Curry went 0 for 8. Mm-hmm. It was like his first game, like 128, or it was more than that. I think he had a streak of making at least 1 3. Gosh, I can't remember what
it was. Crazy,
but it was like multiple seasons of at least one. So
yeah, so I mean, like, pros miss shots. Like, you still got to make your shots. So, Adena's losses, losing to a good Chesapeake team, a Unioda team, like that Unioda game, in all honesty, was pretty much over in the first 4 minutes.
268 games.
Yeah.
It's over. I think it's like 2.5 seasons somewhere. Mm-hmm. That's more.
Well, then with how many games he plays,
16, 24. That's over 3 seasons.
I was gonna say, with how many games he plays, he's probably 5 seasons. But like, for you lose that Unioda game, but like they were down 21 in the second quarter and got it down to 6 in that quarter. So it showed that Adena can really, when they get going, they can really, run their offense well. And they've got a variety. Then that's without mentioning Bryson Smith, who's a really good defender, can get to the basket. Caden Lee is another kid that can really get to the basket. And you've got a variety of athletes for Adena. I think maybe it's this. It's not a. I think every game is a must-win in league play, especially when you're playing 14 league games. It's not like you have a ton, but like if Adena still has league hopes, this is a.
You're going to drop right.
You got to protect your home court.
Right, because essentially, if you lose 2 ZT and Unyoda, you're going to need one of those guys to probably, because obviously one of them is going to beat each other, but then you're probably going to need a little extra help. So you're going to need like a Westfall to knock one of them off, or a Huntington, or a Southeastern, or Paint Valley, whoever. But yeah. This for Adena especially, this is must win if you want to control your own destiny, as they say.
Yeah, and in a league that I think there's probably going to be 1 or 2 losses going to win it, but you got to protect your home court. So for Adena, it's a big game in multiple areas, but especially on their home floor.
All right, so we'll wrap up the boys segment with some Saturday night faction, another big game at Miami Trace, but not as far as a trip from Jackson to Miami Trace as we had on Friday, just a cross-town trip from Washington Courthouse to Miami Trace, both teams with 4 wins. However, Miami Trace a few more games. They're 4-2. Courthouse off to a 4-0 start. With Miami Trace's win over Jackson on Friday, probably say these are probably the top 2 in the league again. I mean, Jackson comes up the next day with a win over Unyoda, who took care of Miami Trace. So the FAC is I don't know. This will be the first big test, I think, for Washington Courthouse.
Yeah, and Courthouse, handled Jackson in a big way last week. They haven't played Hillsboro. That game was pushed off.
Oh, that was the sick game.
That was the sickness game. Yeah. So, Washington 3-0 in the league. Miami Trace 4-0. Miami Trace got off to an 0-2 start, but have won their last 4 games. Brady Armstrong last week against Hillsboro hit 6 threes for all 18 of his points. He also had that 3 threes
in 90 seconds or whatever against Jackson.
And that really was the big difference in that game.
I think the final may have been 11, but I mean, it was like an 8, 9, 10-point game pretty much after the first quarter. So
yeah, so he's an outstanding shooter for them. Bryson Osborne helped cap that game off with, I think he was 6 for 6 for the line, but he had a couple threes in that second half, and overall gave them, the outside scoring that, Armstrong gave them in that first half. So I really like their interior trio of Adam Guthrie, Colton May, and Sky Sawyers, and I thought Sawyers gave them really good minutes on Friday, and then he got into some foul trouble, and then they just didn't go back to him in the fourth. But I think if they would have been, no loss there. Ooh, hear that tummy?
Is that what that was? I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure.
Also Grant Guess. I mean, he hammered one in the last few seconds.
Sort of caught me off guard. I was sort of just wrapping up the broadcast. I'm like, oh my gosh, this dude's about to go slam one the other way.
So Grant Guess coming off the bench for him. Austin Bodecker, Julian Baker, only a freshman, Trey Robinette. They've got a lot of weapons. I think, trying to figure out exactly how Miami Trace wants to play is probably the big thing for them, because I think once they do and they can use all of those weapons, they're going to be really dynamic in a really tough matchup. They also have really good length on the defensive end. I think there was one possession where they blocked 3 shots in a row. Like Jackson just kept getting the rebound, but they just kept blocking shots, and it was different players every time. So you try to shoot over Brady Armstrong. Oh, he's got really good length. Try to shoot over Colton May, really good length.
Grant Guess.
Robinette's got really good length.
Well, and even in Guthrie.
Yeah.
They just got a ton of guys that aren't necessarily, they don't play the role of a big guy, but sort of like Kevin Durant's not, he doesn't play like a big guy.
Right.
He's like 7 foot with a just insanely long wingspan. So
yeah, it's a tough. I think their length is a really tough matchup for offenses, and that, especially being at Miami Trace with the student section behind. Like I love how their gym's set up with the student section behind a basket. I think they should switch ends of the gym for this one, so they had to shoot at the student section in the second half, which I understand why they don't. But But
I think we had a McClain student section at that.
yeah, we
game
did have
as
a
well,
McClain
which
student section.
was kind of odd, but
I think they might have came up because Washington was putting it on them.
yeah.
So they were probably over at Washington and just like, hey, let's go watch this game. But Washington 4-0, and a big part of it is the senior trio of Garrett Rickman, Isaiah Haithcock, and John Wall. They've rolled through their first 4 opponents. Rickman had a huge week. He had 25 plus against Jackson on Tuesday. I saw someone said 27, but they weren't 100% sure on the final numbers. So, we'll go with the 25 plus as that is a safer bet. And he also had 16 against McClain. Haithcock had 21 against McClain. I think it's, this is just a really big, it's a rivalry. It's right down the road from each other. It's city against country, if you want to put it that way. Right. That crowd should be really big and
hopefully,
yeah, and probably kind of nasty,
yeah.
Just because of it's that rivalry, and I think they're 2 well coached teams, and it should be. I feel like points are going to be really tough to come by in that game because I think defensively both teams are going to be locked in and should be really fun.
Yep. So that'll wrap it up for the boys segment of our show. We'll move down to girls. We'll start with one of our standout performers, and we try to mix up who we talk about so it's not the same people every time. But Nelsonville-York making it a little bit tough for us to do that is Airah Lavy for Nelsonville has now set the new school record for made threes in a single game, along with 31 points in their 66-49 win at Meigs. 9 of 15 from beyond the arc. That's a new school record for them. Nelsonville 4-3, 2-1 in the TVC Ohio. They hosted Alexander last night. I guess I probably could have figured out the final for that.
Alexander won by 1.
Oh, Alexander won by 1. So they're now 4-4, 2-2 in the TVC Ohio. On Thursday, they travel to River Valley, who I think was really had a decent record.
River Valley, it's
5-1
like the
4-1.
Best River Valley start.
Yeah,
in a sport in a long time. Yeah, so Lavy, she's going to go play D1 for a reason. 9 of 15 from 3 in a game is ridiculous, and she's she's a tough matchup. She's a lot of what the Buckeyes have, but and that's maybe that's why they have some extra losses because you have to have other players step up. We kind of talked about that off air about like Peyton Johnson from Peebles on that, as she had a huge game against North Adams and then nobody else really did much.
5 of 23 from the field outside of her.
So if Lavy can get some help, I think Nelsonville is going to be one of those really tough matchups because most games they're going to have the best player on the court, and especially in that D3 when it gets to tournament time, I think she's going to be a player to watch for sure. I know, Alexander's a quality program. Also, Athens, I know they lost those 2 league games to them, so it should be it's tough for them at times. But like I said, anytime you have the best player on the court, you got a chance.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll talk some standout performances for teams who are off to a good start or have picked up some big wins. We'll start off with Adena, who, as of now, 8-0. They've been without Emma Garrison, who I think committed to Wilmington. I'm not sure which day it was. I think it was just like a few days ago, over the weekend maybe. But she's been out for their last 2 games. They are 2-0 in that span, 33-29 against McClain, and then 52-15 over Paint Valley. Marley Halcomb has been big for them. Kara Williams has as well. There are obviously some other contributors as well, but just in that one game, now obviously Garrison played, but in that one game against Piketon that we saw, Williams and Halcomb were definitely the 2 biggest contributors for the Warriors. Yeah,
they each had 16 in that game. If you want to go back through the archives and watch, our stream there, as they were really impressive in that win over Piketon. The game against McClain, they're actually a little bit of a game of runs. They were down 2-0, then up 19-2, and then they seemed like they were going to run away with it, and McClain just started to chip away. And I feel like that was partially where not having Garrison as, a go-to scorer in that situation maybe, made it a little more difficult for them to get points. But hey, they won over a good McClain team, and then they hammered Paint Valley. So, Halcom's averaging 12.6 points a game, only a freshman, 17 made threes on the year. Probably is going to have to pick up the scoring slack a little bit for them until Garrison returns. And you know what? Once Garrison's back, that's probably going to even make them even better as a team, because it's going to give them some people with, maybe haven't done as much scoring, giving them some confidence in their ability to score. Kara Williams, 7.8 points a game, 4.8 rebound or assists a game, and then 3 steals a game has really been really good overall for the Warriors. And Sydney Ader, another senior, 7.4 points a game, 2 steals a game. She's also shooting 85% from the line. Provide really good experience at the guard spots for the Warriors. Caroline Corcoran, Corinne Day, giving them some length inside. JC Smith has been really good. She hasn't been scoring the ball, but she's averaging close to 4 assists a game coming off the bench for them. I mean, if you can average 4 points or 4 assists a game off the bench, that's really impressive.
Mm-hmm. And then one other team that has been impressive to start, a team that was extremely impressive last year and maybe thought they'd be down a little bit coming into this year with the amount of impact players that they lost due to graduation, but off to a 5-1 start, Portsmouth West. They've taken down 2 different teams non-league that I think right now are atop of their divisions in each, or in atop of their conferences in each one. So for North Adams, you beat them 49-40. I believe they're still atop the Shack 2. It's close with
they
Peebles.
just tied Lynchburg for first.
Oh, they just okay.
So they're both a game ahead of Peebles.
And then 59-57 over South Gallia, who I'm not sure if they've played any league games.
Not yet, because they're in that SOC. Yeah.
But I would say South Gallia, probably a pretty big favorite right now in the SOC too. So they pick up 2 big wins over both of those schools. And then, this Thursday they have Eastern, who is 0-6. So you probably pick up a win there. Mm-hmm. Now on Friday they have to go.
They go to Logan.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't think it was at home, but it's at Logan. They take on John Glenn, who is 5-1.
And their only loss was to Sheridan, who has not lost.
Yeah, probably expect to see Sheridan over at Southeastern in the D2 district or regionals. Mm-hmm. Well, the regionals are at Lancaster, isn't it?
Yes, or Zanesville.
Oh, Zanesville. Yeah, Zanesville. That was fun.
Yeah.
But they're also at Piketon on the 30th, so really probably a pretty good chance to go 7-2, take a 7-2 record into the new year. If you can pick up a win over John Glenn, go 8-1. Mm-hmm. But I would say for West, comfortably at least 7-2
right.
wins. Probably, I would say a pretty heavy favorite against Eastern, and then I don't know. Piketon has some players, but I mean, I'm excited to see that matchup as well.
Yeah, and I think when you got Emma Sayre on the floor, a Marshall volleyball commit, you've got a Bulldog that she can score, but she also, despite her size, is probably going to guard the best player on the opponent and pretty much will lock them down. So that John Glenn game I think is very interesting because John Glenn has a really good guard. A really good shooting guard, so I think that'll be a good matchup for them. John Glenn, also, they went to Zanesville last year, and they were the team that didn't score.
Who was?
They didn't score in the first half.
Who?
John Glenn.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But they were only down 14, so they're a team that brings back a lot of players from last year, and so I think that's going to be a tough matchup, but overall, I think West has been really impressive with what they've been able to do in replacing as many players as they did last year. And we don't have it written down, but I did want to shout out a couple of teams. Mm-hmm. First, Portsmouth Clay. They beat Western last night. With 4 players on the court.
It's crazy.
I mean, they're a team that I talked to Coach Emmett last night, and they right now they have 5 girls playing. They have 6 in the program, and right. One's out for the year. Yeah. So you're playing with 5. Okay, well,
are you allowed to bring in players midway through the season? Like, I know it's like not that usually doesn't happen. But like, are you allowed to?
I can't say no, but
like, obviously not a transfer, but like
I
if
feel like
somebody
it's
in the school-
frowned upon. But I know Fed Hawk a few years ago had 5 girls, and then like a couple wanted to come on, but they were like, no, we're good, which is, you know. So I think people like, if you haven't gone through like the preseason, you haven't gone through the conditioning, I think it's kind of frowned upon in that way. But a good thing, you know, they're mostly freshmen and sophomores. They have 11 eighth graders.
That's good.
So that just gives them some really good depth coming up. You know, I think they've got 3 wins on the year. I mean, you finished a couple games with 4. I think they finished a game with 3 the other day, and it's just like you're competing every day, and you know, it's tough for them. You know, they're one of the smaller schools in our coverage area, but you know, anytime you can get wins when you're, you know, behind the 8 ball
man,
there. And one thing, you know, I'm going to look it up real quick. I looked it up the other day. I don't know if they've updated their stats from last night, but they do have one of my favorite stats, and this is just to kind of how their team is kind of, you know, put together. So they're 3-3, which is amazing to me. Let's go player. Oh, nope. Of course, things have to load because Max Preps has 36,000 ads.
Got to make that money.
Yeah. So right now, they have the 5 players right now. You know, led by Emma Eminent with 18.8 points a game. Sophia Kraft 6.8 points, 9.6 rebounds a game. One of my favorite, 14 rebounds a game. One of my favorite stats, you know, Abby Hunter, 9.7 rebounds a game.
Yeah.
0.0 points. She only shot like 9 times on the year. So, I mean, she's not putting up shots. But the
grabbing rebounds.
Yeah, the grabbing rebounds, for sure. They have not made a 3 this year. But they're only 0 for 10. So they're shooting like a little over 1 3 a game. So they're playing within themselves of what they can do. And, you know, I think that's admirable. They have 1 junior, no seniors, 2 freshmen, 3 sophomores. So
I think look for Portsmouth Clay next year.
Yeah.
And see, obviously, gosh, I'm struggling, but I mean, like you said, you bring what class is Eminent?
She's a freshman.
Oh, yeah. So I mean, you're gonna bring back everybody and add on, and like we kind of talked about that element with like Portsmouth last year. Like to a certain extent, it almost doesn't even matter how good the 8th graders are, just having other people.
Yeah,
I mean, and if it's 11, they'll probably have enough to at least floor a JV team, because you figure you might, out of 11, so if you have 5 in the program, maybe you send 3 up to varsity, so then you have 8, and then you have 7 on JV. I mean, something like that. I mean, I don't know if you would want to have 16 girls on your varsity bench and only like 6 or 7 are playing, but I mean, I don't know. It's just crazy how successful some of these teams. I mean, Portsmouth went to a district final last year and finished the game with 4 players.
Yeah.
So, was it 4 or was it just 5? I think they had 6 and finished with 5, maybe.
They finished, it was with 4.
Did 2 foul out?
Yeah, because it was right at the very end was when Allen fouled out. She fouled out with like 10 seconds left. Yeah. But it's just going to make you better throughout the year. You're going to be in different situations that are going to be pretty difficult. But when you add in new players, you know, it just gives you more depth. Like I watched Portsmouth against Fort Fry, and I couldn't tell you how many points the freshmen scored, but I know that they had a couple of people get in foul trouble, and they could actually sub. Yeah. And they were able to play some matchups because, you know, a couple players, it was a bad matchup for them. So they were able to, you know, make some changes that they weren't able to make last year. So I think just having that depth is a huge piece for them. Another team that, Portsmouth out to, they have 1 loss. Fairland hasn't lost. I think we just kind of skated by a little bit on the Uniota Adena game on Friday. I think Uniota's probably a big time favorite in that because of Garrison being out, but Uniota out to a really good start. They're getting really good contributions from like Maya Hamilton, North Adams.
That's what I was going to say. We didn't have it listed, but North Adams and Peebles have a rematch, and they split the season series that is concluded before December. That game was like last Monday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they played twice in 10 days or something like really tight like that. And I mean, them, Lynchburg, and Peebles are probably the top three in the Shack too. So it's like one of those season series is already over, and we haven't even made it to the holiday break yet.
Yeah, Lynchburg's the one who hasn't got the. I think they've played each of them once so far, so they haven't gotten to the doubling up. I think they doubled up with like a
Eastern.
Or West Union, something like that. And last night, so on Monday, North Adams beats Lynchburg. It was a 2-point game, and it. One of the things that I've seen a lot, and like you hear it a lot, because sometimes we're in the bleachers. You'll have people when you have an open layup, but oh no, dribble it out, draw the foul. Well, if you're not a very good foul shooting team,
just take the points.
Take the points because the clock's gonna keep running too. Well, last night, I'm just watching the stream. North Adams and Lynchburg. Lynchburg cuts it down to 2 after North Adams was up the whole game. North Adams had split free throws on the possession before that. They break the pressure. They kick it down, get a layup. Oh, they're up 4 instead of stopping the clock and maybe being up 4. But for sure, they make the layup. They're up 4. Then Lynchburg's in a tougher spot. I think it's smarter to take the points when you can, and as long as they're guaranteed points. Like I think it was.
But you don't want to let a 3 go. But like a wide open layup, that's a little bit different.
Like Ali Farishmaka from. I might not have said it completely right. Northern Iowa, like this might be before you even, because I remember it was really baggy shorts. So that would have been in like the mid 2000s. Yeah. But they upset someone in the first round of the NCAA tournament, and he just pulled up from 3 when they were like up 1. Like he might have had a layup. Nope, pulled up from 3, and it was like the biggest shot of the tournament because it was like. It was so stupid, but it ended the game more or less, and that's kind of what take the layup. It's going to put you up 4, and then I don't think Lynchburg scored again because they look kind of
depleted.
So that's a really good win. So in the SOC, it's actually the SOC 1 because remember it's the opposite. So like the bigger schools are in the lower number. Yeah. So Lynchburg and North Adams are each 4-1 in that, and Peebles is 3-2, or maybe they're 4-2. Either way, but they're 1 game back.
It's tight in the Shack too.
Yeah, and remember they still got to play the teams from the other side, so they got to play White Oak, who's off to an undefeated start in the Shack. So, it's a long way to go in the Shack. For show.
All right, so we'll talk some game previews. We have a couple of them on tap. The first one coming up this Friday, a big SVC matchup. Huntington at Southeastern. Huntington off to a 6-3 start. However, they have won 4 of their last 5, and then Southeastern off to a pretty solid 7-1 start. I think their only loss is to Adena. I think that was a single digit.
Well, it ended up being 13, but it was like a 4 to 6 point game the whole game, and then Adena free throws put it away late. So Huntington, like you mentioned, won 4 of their last 5 games, led by Allie Baker, a junior who's averaging 17.9 points, 7.2 rebounds, 3.1 assists, and 3.3 steals per game, along with seniors Emma Henshaw, 7.1 points and 4.5 assists a game, and Nora Moore, 6.9 points and 7.7 rebounds a game. There's been really big key cogs for Coach Urich's squad. Torrey Smith, 5.7 points a game, 3.8 steals a game. Only a sophomore has been really good for him. And then Leah McCloskey has also helped provide them with some really good backcourt depth. The losses for Huntington have came to teams that are combined 22-2. So, they've lost to Unionta, they've lost to Adena. The Adena game was a little bit closer. They actually put up the second most. Well, I guess Kaufman scored 41. So it was, third most points that UNO has given up on the year. And, they can really score. Like, Huntington can really score. They can play some good defense as well. So they're a team that I think is not a super fun matchup, especially since Baker seems to be really hot as of late. She's scored over 20 in like 3 of the last 4 games for them. And I think when Coach Urick sent the stats in the other day, I thought he was just sending a replay of the same stats from the day before, because I think she had the exact same stat line. It was like 23 points, like 4 rebounds, 6 steals, something like that. So, for Huntington, they're very reliant on Baker's ability to score, but also, like Nora Moore had a double-double the other day. Emma Henshaw's had some big game scoring. Like you called a game last year where she hit
I didn't call it.
Oh, you didn't call it?
I was on camera.
I was just kidding. You filmed a game last year that she hit a game-winning 3.
Yep.
So they're a team that, they're well coached. They can do a lot of different things. It's a tough matchup. I think this is going to be a game should really be one to watch for in this area, especially in the SVC. As Southeastern still technically has a chance to win the league, but I feel like it's because they haven't played Unio yet. But for the most part, this is going to be for tournament seeding and just overall record wise. But Southeastern out to a 7-1 start. They got a really balanced attack. They're led by Gabby Purnell. She averages 13.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 3.3 assists a game. But then they've got 3 other players that are 9.6 points a game or above, including Morgan Ware, 9.6 points a game, 6.5 rebounds, 5.3 assists. She leads the SVC in assists. Gives really good length. She averages over a steal and over a block a game. I believe she's the only. She's one of 2 players in the SVC that I know of. Her and Miley Smith are the 2 that I know of that both average, over a steal and a block, along with like 3 assists a game. So, Ware's had an outstanding start to the year. The Ruckles, they literally sub for each other. So, you're constantly playing one of them. Reese starts. She averages 10 points and 11.6 rebounds a game. And Roan comes off the bench. She averages 4.1 points and 4.9 assists per game. So you're getting almost 16 rebounds a game. If I could do math, that would be 16 and a half rebounds a game. 14 points, 16 and a half rebounds a game from one spot is, not bad at all. And then you also have sophomores Gracie Brown, who's averaging 9.6 points a game. She's hit 16 threes on the year. She's hit some big shots for them. Mm-hmm. Like in that Vinton County game that I covered, like she hit 2 threes late. I think they're winning like the entire game. Vinton County took the lead with like 3 minutes left, and then on back-to-back possessions, Gracie Brown hit threes. And then at that same time, Allie Fisher, who does it, she averages like two points, 2 rebounds, and a steal. Like she does a lot of little things for them. Like she made a big basket in that game. So they've got some people that, Purnell's the big one that you're going to really focus on in the game plan. But if you don't box out the Ruckles, if you don't pay attention to Gracie Brown or Morgan Ware, like they're gonna burn you. And then if you say, okay, we're gonna try to take away these, well then Purnell's just gonna go off. Yeah. So they're a really tough matchup. These are 2 really well coached teams. I think this is gonna be a really fun matchup.
And then we'll wrap it up with an FAC league meeting on Saturday, Hillsboro at McClain. Both of these teams are, for Hillsboro, they're sort of towards the bottom of the league, and McClain only 1 loss, and that was to a really good Jackson team, who I believe is still undefeated overall, and in the FAC, obviously. But for Hillsboro, 3-6 overall, 1-3 in the FAC. Sophomore Kobe Miles has been big for the Indians so far. She's leading their team in points with over 10 a game through their first 9. Blake Herdman, who I believe was their only returning All-FAC selection from a season ago, she's back as a junior, averaging 9.6. Actually, I believe it was 9.9 points per game. And then just a freshman, Tylee Davis, averaging 9.6. So, they've got a lot of key contributors for the Indians. And then for McClain, 4-4, but 3-1 in the FAC. So 1-3 outside of the league. I know they had the loss to Adena the other night. Just looking at their schedule, they also had a loss, obviously, to Jackson. That's their one league loss. They lose to Waverly by 3 and to Clinton Massey by 1. So really, outside of the Jackson loss, they have losses of 4, 1, and 3, and then 19 to Jackson. But I mean, they're not losing these games by very much. They're led, I'm assuming, by
she's only a freshman,
by Paisley Pryor. I mean, she's been great for them so far.
Lily Barnes is a senior that's been really good for him. Now, Anna Eikenberry, I was really impressed with early, but I think she might have left the Adena game with an injury. So, I mean, that's, but they have some really good depth. Luca Matisic, she's a really good soccer player. Gives them good minutes. Caitlin Jett, another starter for them. I've liked what I've seen out of McClain. They have a first-year coach. A lot of young players on this roster, so they're kind of going through some growing pains in the close games together. But that fight they showed late in that game against Adena, Leah Lovett was huge for them in that game. She came off the bench and she kept every play alive. So you miss a shot, she's getting the offensive rebound, and it was just that effort that is man, they're going to win a lot of games. And I think, on Saturday, this is a big rivalry game, the Rotary Bowl in football. But here in basketball, I don't know, whatever, but it's an all day thing. So they're playing the girls game early and then the boys
1:30 or something.
Yeah.
It was really...
then the boys in that same matchup with Hillsboro at McClain that night also. So,
1:15 on Max Preps is
outstanding.
What it has it down as. So
I think it said the varsity boys game was gonna be at 6. So I think it's just gonna be once this game's over, we're gonna play the freshman boys and then JV boys and then varsity girls. Did you ever have to go through an all day? Did you have to go through all day where we played boy, girl, boy, girl, boy?
Yeah, I was going to say, usually it was JV girls, freshman boys, JV boys, varsity girls, and then varsity boys is, I think, the order it went in.
One year we were up at Logan, so I think it might have been before your time. I think it was your 8th grade year. We played freshman boys, JV girls, JV boys, varsity girls, varsity boys, and we're at Logan. So it's not like I could go home, ride the bus back. No, just stay there the whole day, and it was and then we had a kid that he played a lot on the freshman team, and then he played a lot in the JV, so he had to go sit for one entire game and then go back, and I didn't like how it was. The way you said I would like better, but I mean that's a big break for the girls. But I remember we went to Huntington one year. We played varsity, or we played JV boys, varsity girls, varsity boys, and then we went back during the week and played JV girls, freshman boys. Yeah, and which was a weird schedule, but at the same time it was okay, it wasn't as long of a night,
right.
And I felt like it gave the girls a little better crowd. But so I think this one's going to be an interesting one. I think it is a big rivalry game. Hillsboro has been in a lot of close games, and like you said, they're really young. So this should be a lot of young talent on the floor in this game for sure.
Yeah, and John, I think unless you have anything extra you want to talk about, that'll...
I got a couple things.
Okay.
First off, don't drink and drive.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. It's just a fact of life. Just don't do that.
Yeah.
You're welcome, everyone. Especially McDonald's, who sponsors Overtime. Or Overtime, presented by McDonald's. But Thursday, down at Ironton, the Ironton Classic. So you've got the first game.
South Webster and...
South Webster, Raceland. Then you got Minford and Afrocentric. Lindsley
And Fairland.
and Fairland. Lindsley is the only team to beat Warren, and Warren's really good, the boys. And then Ironton plays somebody. Huntington? Yeah, they play Huntington.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, they play Huntington High. Then on Friday, there's also games down there, it's more of kind of like the prep school games on Friday, also at Ironton. But the Ironton boys play Wesley Christian out of Kentucky that day in the nightcap there.
On Max Preps, it just says varsity opponent.
Nice.
Like see.
Yeah, so that could be
Anybody.
Yeah, it could be anybody. Interesting game. New Boston and Ironton St. Joe are playing in a tournament championship on Friday. I believe it's definitely in Kentucky, but they both won a game on Monday, so they play each other before they'll play twice during the league season. So, there's maybe a preview. Somebody gets a title. It's Rose Hill, I think, is where it's at. Yeah. And then Saturday, or also up at Logan at the Holiday Classic, you mentioned West is playing John Glenn there. Logan is playing that night, is also in the girls. The next day over at Logan, Adena plays the West Cowboys, bang bang, out of Columbus. Who knows? Like, that could be a really good game. Could be not a really good game. We'll see. I feel like that's a team that Adena probably has an advantage over, basketball skill wise. But then also that day you have Logan Elm against Hilliard Davidson, Uniota against South Point, which should be, I feel like should be a decent matchup, but Uniota hasn't played very well in the non-league outside of the McClain or the Miami Trace game. So, we'll see in that. And then Logan plays Lyndon McKinley. Logan got a win the other day. The boys did. And then the nightcap is Heath and Lucasville Valley. So, if you are not going out to just the regular games this week, you got some holiday classics that you can get out to. And then on, I think their show's going to be on Christmas. Coming out on Christmas.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll have a preview of the end of the year and maybe have our best Christmas sweaters on. I have one. I literally have one Christmas sweater, so I'm going to wear it.
I feel like I already wore mine on here.
Yeah,
the little Snoopy thing.
I did like it because it got the little tree on it, right? Yeah, I like the tree.
I'll just wear it again.
Make sure you watch your favorite Christmas movie. What's your favorite Christmas movie?
Probably, I'm not a big Christmas movie guy. Like, it's probably the, original. I don't think it's the original, but, the Rudolph movie where it looks like they're stuffed animals, and it's, the Abominable Snowman.
Yeah.
God, what is the lumberjack dude's name?
Yukon Cornelius.
Yeah, Yukon Cornelius. That's, my favorite. I went to the Zoo Lights last night, and I got a picture with, some dude had on an Abominable Snowman costume.
Nice.
And I got a picture with it.
Nice.
That was kind of
cool. One of the worst parts about coaching was that, the Rudolph special would always be on at, and especially coaching at, the freshman JV level. You are kind of just given whatever practice time they give you. And I always miss the Rudolph special. And I didn't get to watch it for so many years. And I really enjoy the Rudolph special. It's a Wonderful Life's mine, but also Die Hard is a very good Christmas movie.
It's a Wonderful Life. Is that the black and white one?
Yeah.
Where the dude shoots his eye out with a BB?
No, that's A Christmas Story.
Oh.
No, and that's not black and white. That's just set in the 40s also. Oh. But no, A Christmas Story is oh my God.
Are there any Christmas movies you hate? What's the one with where they go get the big Christmas tree?
Christmas Vacation?
God, I hate that movie.
What?
It's so annoying.
I hate you so
much. I literally want to punch the dad in the face. I can't stand it.
Oh my God, I hate you so much.
I can't watch that movie.
I hope people are watching this because people love it.
I can't watch that movie. It's
I'm trying to think. Are there any I hate? Like, I didn't think Die Hard was a Christmas movie until a couple years ago. Then I watched it, and it's like all the music in it is Christmas music.
There was one movie that was called like Bad Santa, and it was kind of bad.
Bad Santa's funny too. Like, I I
Maybe
hate
it
the
wasn't that
I hate
one.
the fact that like you kind of laugh at stuff I say every once in a while, but then you have the complete opposite, like actual sense of humor as me. Like when it comes to like
Like
Christmas Vacation, and
it's just so stupid. I can't stand
it's
it.
fun.
I don't know. I mean, it's okay. I mean, Adam Sandler's like my favorite actor, but even some of his movies, I'm like, God, this
Eight
is
Crazy
awful.
Nights is a great Hanukkah movie.
Well, like,
Eight Crazy Nights is definitively the best Hanukkah movie I've ever seen. I've also not seen any others, but
there was an Adam.
and it's so bad. It's so bad.
There was an Adam Sandler movie that I can't. I mean, Jack and Jill's pretty bad, but
Yeah.
I mean, Happy Gilmore's probably my favorite movie
All right.
of all time. But like, even like Billy Madison is kind of annoying.
I hate you so much.
Like, it's so stupid.
That's the fun of it.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I mean, Happy Gilmore is stupid, but like, I don't know.
Everyone here in this room is now dumber for you saying that. I award you no points. And may God have mercy on your soul.
I don't know. Cars is the best movie ever, and he has terrible ratings, which makes no sense.
No, there was something like you asked me what my least favorite Christmas movie was, and you didn't even let me answer.
Well, yeah, because you just started going off on. I don't even know what you're talking about.
I was trying to think of Christmas movies. Let me think. Thinky. There's something I had something I was considering as a Christmas movie, and I didn't like it. But yeah, I watched the end of A Christmas Story the other day, and the scene where they have to go to get the Chinese food for Christmas, and how like stereotypical the Chinese people are singing, and it's like I'm not going to do an impression because I don't want to, even though I'm Asian too, but like it's so hilarious, and just like you couldn't do it now because it's so stereotypical. But in case anyone here is a Disney fan, the Carousel of Progress, which is the best Disney ride there is. Have you ever been there? Okay, so the Carousel of Progress was created in 1964, and it's a 20-minute show, and it's really not been updated since like the last
Is it
scene.
like you ride through a little like town or something?
No, you're in a theater, and the theater moves around, but it's air conditioned and dark, so and it never has a line. So once you get in, you can just take a 20-minute nap, and it's beautiful. But the voice of the Carousel of Progress was Gene Shepard, who wrote A Christmas Story, and is the narrator for it. So he's also in it. He plays one of the characters that just like the line starts back there as they're waiting to see Santa. Okay, there's got to be a bad Christmas movie.
I just told you one.
Shut up. Yeah, I'm disappointed in myself right now. I'm gonna have to watch some Christmas movies because over Christmas, I'm gonna be at a cabin for a couple days.
I don't even know some of these. Christmas with the Franks, Deck the Halls.
Ooh. Did you just type in bad Christmas movies? Yeah.
That's rated as Christmas with the Cranks is rated 5%. The Nutcracker is rated 0.
How bad? Okay.
I remember in elementary they showed us like the play version of that, and that was awful. That was torture.
Okay,
that was disgusting.
So I dated a girl that was in the Dayton Ballet, and she took me to the Dayton Ballet version of the Nutcracker, and it was pretty good. But that was after watching my niece in the Nutcracker multiple times, and it was, don't pay attention to this, Lainey, not great. Because it was like a little kid's version, and it just wasn't, but like seeing adults doing it, it was better. Like the music's good, but yeah, it's just.
I will say Home Alone.
I love Home
Really,
Alone.
the first two I would say are probably up there for me, and even like Polar Express is pretty good. What?
I love Home Alone.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know there's like a third one that's kind of...
Oh, there's a bunch now, but the third one I think's okay. Like the third one made money.
29%.
Oh, I know what I was gonna say. I got a Christmas movie for you. It doesn't feature Christmas in any way. It's just like if you have Roku, you can watch it on there because I watched it last night. RoboCop, 1987. If you like violence, you like RoboCop. It's such a good movie. Like I was laughing so hard at some of the stuff in it.
92%.
On what, RoboCop?
Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, it's like the weirdest.
But
like
IMDb only has it 7.6 out of 10.
Like it's weird because like it's gratuitous violence. There's some horrendously bad things where people are no longer alive, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I kind of get it now. I think it's because I'm older and I kind of understand like the extra concepts that were in it. But man, some of the violence is really funny.
All right, well, I think we've had enough
RoboCop,
fun
1987.
talk at the end. So that'll do it for today's episode of SOSA Overtime, presented by McDonald's.